Now welcome to another lightning response video, where this time the question comes to us from Ninja-ish Productions, who asked, "Hey Thor, I've recently come to the conclusion that The Last Jedi is actually a really good sequel to specifically The Force Awakens, despite not being a good sequel to the other movies. It had some very interesting ideas to follow what JJ had set up. But I believe it was the story choices made in The Force Awakens that caused the failure of the entire trilogy. Why do you think people ignored pretty objectively bad decisions in The Force Awakens, such as having the Jedi Order already gone and having the Republic get destroyed, but got angry at the result of those choices in the following movie?" Okay, so I think one of the reasons why The Force Awakens maybe tends to escape some of the criticism or the extent of it that the other two films in the trilogy often receive, or why it's not blamed more for arguably the failure of the trilogy on the whole, is because it was so open-ended that, in theory anyway, anything could have happened after that movie, and so the films that carried it on and made, shall we say, more definitive choices with the story, like The Last Jedi did, they take the blame. Though, as you point out, yeah, The Force Awakens did make a lot of bold and bad definitive choices as well that did set the stage for failure ultimately. It already has the Jedi Order gone and then proceeds to destroy the New Republic halfway through the film, which are both just horrible, horrible decisions because those are the two key things the previous trilogy, or should I say the original trilogy, that's what they accomplished. The previous movie in the story is literally called Return of the Jedi, and then the next part of the story starts with them gone again. And this then after the prequel trilogy spent an entire trilogy showing not only the downfall of the Jedi, but also the downfall of the Republic, or how it became an empire. And so the first 6 movies are this very cohesive story arc. They make sense with each other. They show the height, fall, and rebirth of the Jedi and Republic. And then episode 7 is like, yeah, we're going to instantly undo all of that and do the same thing all over again, essentially. We're going to give you Empire versus Rebellion all over again and have one lone potential Jedi that can save them all. Which is why so many people see the sequels as more of a soft reboot than true sequels to the first 2 trilogies. However, all that said, The Last Jedi didn't exactly have to abide by all that was alluded to in The Force Awakens. It did have the option to do other things with the story than to affirm the destruction of the Jedi and New Republic. I mean, when Rey finds Luke on the island, there could have been any number of reasons for his isolation besides giving up on the Jedi entirely. Rey could have found out that Luke was secretly training another new generation of Jedi, or that they hadn't all been killed like was thought, and that he, along with perhaps the Force ghosts, had guided Rey to the island because perhaps she was his daughter and he had lost her somewhere along the way and somehow, and it would then be her, seen by him, by Luke in a vision perhaps, that would ultimately destroy Snoke, who was actually somehow Darth Plagueis who had escaped death after all. And yes, you could certainly argue that messes with the prophecy of the Chosen One and Anakin fulfilling it, which is why you make Anakin a big and important part of the story of the sequel trilogy. That's why you bring in Hayden Christensen and tie it all together in a meaningful way. Like I've said before, the prequels are the fall of Anakin, the original trilogy is his redemption, and the sequels are his lasting legacy. They could have been about Rey representing the light or Anakin side of him, versus Kylo representing the dark or Vader side of him. As for the New Republic, well, just because the Hosnian system got destroyed doesn't mean the rest of the galaxy would have rolled over and given up and let the First Order just conquer it, which is implied they did. It's implied they received virtually no opposition and just walked right in and took everything over. I mean, why couldn't there have been several different New Republic fleets spread across the galaxy? Not to mention, why in a galaxy where 2 planet-destroying Death Stars had already been created, why wouldn't you spread your resources out a little more? Why would you bunch everything up like that and get it all blown up in one fell swoop? Either way, even if that was the bulk of the New Republic fleet, it could have easily been that the rest of the galaxy has ships, right? We do see them in The Rise of Skywalker. And so after what the First Order had so boldly done, and with the memory of the Empire still alive and well in the minds of so many, why couldn't it be that Leia gets elected the new Supreme Chancellor and everyone that's left, which should still be a good chunk of people across the galaxy, right? Why wouldn't they just join with the Resistance in fighting the First Order? I mean, even George Lucas wanted Leia to become the Supreme Chancellor at the end of his version of the sequel trilogy. And no, I'm not exactly trying to defend The Force Awakens here. Again, I agree those were some horrible choices that were made with the Jedi and the New Republic. Instead, I'm trying to point out that even with those poor choices The Force Awakens made, There was still other directions to take the story in that could have, in a way, made those choices feel not as bad or as insulting to the original trilogy. But the real problem is, to be blunt, J.J. Abrams was a coward with that movie. He's admitted he didn't know what to do with or how to use Luke Skywalker, not in a way that wouldn't steal the spotlight from his new characters. And so he just puts him on an island for someone else to figure out down the road, not realizing that, in all reality, it would have been perfectly fine, dare I say, expected, for Luke and the other heroes to shine rather brightly in this film after fans had waited over 30 years to see them on screen again. There would have been absolutely nothing wrong with Episode 7 being a celebration of the heroes of old that also introduced key new characters. In all reality, Episode 7 should have just modeled itself after The Phantom Menace and/or A New Hope. It should have felt more like a standalone film that alluded to the possibility of there being more story or more problems to come, like with Darth Vader surviving at the end of A New Hope, or Palpatine promising to watch Anakin's career with great interest. Anything like that over ending it with a cliffhanger and giving fans 2 years to come up with a better idea for the story than what we'd actually get. Which, no, isn't the main reason why so many fans didn't like The Last Jedi. It's not because they got attached to their favorite theory and then it didn't come to pass and so they were angry and disappointed. The main reason why so many didn't like that film is because, well, they thought it was a bad film. That's it. There's nothing more to it than that. And had it been great, they would have forgotten all about those theories they'd liked going into it. Or if it had been amazing, they may have looked back and laughed at those theories. They may have appreciated that none of them came to pass. But anyway, Episode 7 should have just been the heroes of old, Han, Luke, Leia, Lando, Chewie, and so on, getting yet another victory. One last victory by working together and being aided by a new generation of heroes. It should have ended with them all together one last time before everything starts to go wrong in the next movie. Just to show us that everything they had fought and sacrificed for in the original trilogy, that it all meant something. Don't show us that off-screen over the past 30 years, everything had fallen apart for them. And so going back to the question, why do people in general, it seems, get angrier or place more blame on, say, The Last Jedi over The Force Awakens? Well, it's because there was still hope after that first movie, after Episode 7, at least for a lot of fans. I know there are those out there who didn't like 7 from the start and never saw potential there. But most people were willing to give that film the benefit of the doubt. Most thought, of course, they have a plan and that it'll all make sense and be great by the end of the trilogy. But then Episode 8 happened and, well, I have to disagree that it was a good sequel specifically to 7. I personally feel like that the opposite is true, that the film did, as has been joked about and discussed ad nauseum at this point, I do feel like Rian Johnson was far more interested in subverting expectations and carrying on the story he was given. He's even basically admitted this by talking about how he wanted to give his movie a definitive ending rather than carrying on from 7 and setting up 9. That's another reason why his film gets a lot of the blame for the failure of the sequels, and not so much The Force Awakens. Well, that's all I got for you this time. Now it's your turn to take to the comments below and tell me what you think about this one. Should The Force Awakens get more blame? And why doesn't it get more, considering, yeah, as I said and as the original comment said, it made some pretty bold and bad decisions. Or you can leave a question for a future lightning response video by starting your comment off with "Hey Thor" and then asking away. And I do think, since I've been getting a ton of questions lately, that I'll once again try to do an actual lightning response video, maybe this weekend, where I answer a bunch of questions all at once. Either way, do leave your comments below. Let's talk some Star Wars, and until next time, thanks for watching.